In speedrunning, there are two basic categories that can be applied to pretty much every game: any percent and 100%. The goal of the any percent category is to complete the game as fast as possible. It doesn't matter how much of the game you go through, so long as you can get to whatever is defined as the game's ending without modifying the game. The 100% category also has the goal of completing the game as fast as possible, but adds on the requirement that the runner must collect all of the things the game has to offer. What things are required depends on the game and the speedrun community that surrounds it. In addition to these two categories, there's also a third lesser run category that can be applied to most games called low percent. The goal of this category is to complete the game as fast as possible while collecting the least amount of things. So it's sort of the inverse of 100%. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait, isn't that just any percent? I mean, if you're skipping everything that it's possible to skip, then you should be playing less of the game and therefore the run should take less time, right? The answer to that is sometimes. For example, the current Ocarina of Time any percent route gets only 3 items: Kokiri Sword, Deku Shield, and Deku Nuts. That's all you need to beat the game as fast as possible. And as far as current game knowledge goes, you can't beat the game with less than 3 items. So for Ocarina of Time, any percent is low percent. For now at least. But that's not going to be the case for every game. For many games, going out of your way to get extra items will save time, as those extra items may be good for dealing with enemies quickly or for performing skips that save more time than their requirements take to obtain. In the current Breath of the Wild any percent route, runners pick up a bow as well as different types of arrows to prepare for the Blight fights and Calamity Ganon. Obtaining arrows is not required to beat the game, but using them for these final fights drastically reduces how long it takes to get through them, compared to, say, only using swords. So for Breath of the Wild, any percent is not low percent. And this is when the idea of low percent starts to become an interesting question. For most speedrun categories, progress happens when you can beat the game faster and faster. That applies to low percent as well, but there's a second way low percent can make progress that other categories can't, which is when someone figures out a new glitch or technique that reduces how many things are necessary to reach the end of the game, even if it makes the run longer. Since the primary goal of low percent is to complete the game with the least amount of things necessary, it's possible that a new world record in a game's low percent category will be slower than a previous one. On leaderboards, low percent runs are typically sorted first by how many things the runner obtained, and then by what the runner's time was. So, if I complete a low percent speedrun in 2 minutes using 10 items, but another runner completes a low percent speedrun in 2 hours using only 9 items, their run is better. The reason low percent isn't as prolific as the typical any percent and 100% categories can be for any number of reasons, such as the aforementioned case of low percent being the same as any percent, or if nobody believes running low percent for a game would be very interesting or fun. And for some games, even attempting to run low percent becomes ridiculous. This is the case for The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. To put into perspective how weird Twilight Princess low percent is, let's first compare it time-wise to some other categories. The current any percent record at the time of this video is just under 3 hours, and the 100% record is around 6.5. The current low percent record is 24 hours, 59 minutes, and 52 seconds. Almost 4 times as long as the 100% category. Compared to the any percent category, low percent skips an additional 8 things that are usually collected in any percent, where things in Twilight Princess are defined as items, collectibles, and warp portals. With its additional 22 hours, low percent skips 3 Poe Souls, 2 small keys, and 3 warp portals compared to any percent. That's it. But obviously the question remains, why does this take so long? The answer to that is a technique known as pickup sliding. On December 26, 2015, Twilight Princess speedrunner Zelu was playing his game and opened up the treasure chest in Snowpeak Ruins, which contains the bedroom key. And then for whatever reason, just left the game on and went to do something else. Their game stayed on overnight, and when they came back to it the next day on December 27th, Link was inside the chest instead of being in front of it where he should be. This confusing behavior was shared with the community, where community member Dragonbane took a closer look at Link's idling animation and found something strange. Normally, when Link opens a chest or picks up certain items as a human, he'll turn around and show the player what they've picked up with a text box that describes the item and waits for the player to close it. Since the game doesn't know when the player will close the text box, Link is put into an idling animation that loops indefinitely. During every frame of this animation, Link's position changes by a tiny amount depending on how he sways. But he doesn't go anywhere because the animation always returns him to the same position after every loop. Or at least that's what it probably should do. What Dragonbane found was that this animation loop seems to be missing a frame right at the very end of its cycle, meaning that every time Link loops through this animation, his position shifts. If the animation had just one more frame to it,